We tend to think that intelligence is all about, acing a math test or remembering a bunch of facts. But what if the real signals of intelligence have almost nothing to do with that? In this explainer, we're going to uncover those subtle patterns. We're going to look right under the hood of our cognitive engine and see what's really going on, especially when things get tough. So let's just bust the biggest myth right out of the gate. Look, being a walking encyclopedia is impressive, for sure, but it isn't the core of intelligence. The psychological reality is all about processing power. It's how your mind takes in information, how it adjusts to new data, and how it solves problems when the easy answers just aren't there. And this leads us to the central question, really. What if the truest measure of our cognitive ability isn't found in our successes, but in how we deal with friction? How our minds react when we're wrong, when we get frustrated, and when we fail? That's exactly what we're going to explore. Okay, so our first cognitive pattern is something called the closed loop. Just think of this as a feedback system that pretty much locks a person out of learning and growing. It's like a mental circuit that just keeps running the exact same program over and over and over again. This whole pattern is really built on two core components. First up, you've got passive acceptance. This is when someone just accepts reality as it's presented to them. This is just how it's done, without ever thinking to ask why. You can probably picture someone who's done a job the same way for 20 years, right? Even when there are obviously much better ways to do it now. And second, there's the error loop. This is a persistent failure to connect your actions to their consequences. And this is where things get really stuck. So here we can see that error loop in action. A person takes an action, they get a negative result, but instead of looking at their own role in it, they blame something else. Bad luck, other people, the universe, whatever. And because that crucial link between action and result is never made, they're basically doomed to repeat the exact same action, just hoping for a different outcome. It's like living in the movie Groundhog Day, and it's all fueled by a failure to self-correct. And this quote just brilliantly illustrates the why behind it all. This isn't really about laziness, it's about cognitive economy. The brain is always going to default to the path of least resistance. It takes so much more mental energy to question and to analyze and to forge a new path than it does to just keep walking down the one that's already there, even if that path leads straight off a cliff. All right, let's move on to our second pattern, the expert illusion. And I have a feeling that if you've ever found yourself in one of those truly bizarre internet arguments or a completely baffling holiday dinner debate, this one is going to sound very, very familiar. At the very heart of this illusion is the famous Dunning-Kruger effect. It's such a cruel paradox, isn't it? The cognitive tools you need to actually be competent in a subject are the very same tools you need to see the gaps in your own knowledge. So if you don't have those tools, you're just left with this massive blind spot where your own incompetence should be. This is basically the Dunning-Kruger effect in a nutshell. You see on one side this tiny little bar for actual knowledge, and on the other, a towering bar for confidence. We all know that person who's read one article on a topic and now speaks with the unshakable authority of a seasoned expert. That's this right here. But here's the flip side. True intelligence actually fosters intellectual humility. Like Socrates famously said, the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. The more you learn about a really complex topic, doesn't matter if it's geopolitics or quantum physics, the more you become aware of just how vast it is. You start to realize that the landscape of your ignorance is way bigger than the tiny little island of your knowledge. And that's why true experts are often the most cautious with their claims. For our third and final pattern, we're going to shift gears from pure logic to the incredibly powerful connection between our emotions and our ability to reason. We're talking about the emotional override. This is when the feeling brain completely hijacks the thinking brain. So what does this override actually look like in the real world? Well, it shows up as an extremely low tolerance for frustration, losing your temper over really minor setbacks. It's impulsivity, that constant need for an immediate reward. It can also be literal thinking, an inability to get sarcasm or metaphor. All of these are signals that our emotional brain is overpowering our rational one. Think about it. Delaying gratification, planning for the long term, tolerating frustration, these aren't just personality traits, they are computationally expensive tasks. They require a ton of mental processing power. So if someone really struggles with them, it suggests that their central processor is kind of running on low battery, prioritizing immediate survival and reward over complex, future-oriented thought. This can also lead to a lack of something called cognitive empathy. And this is really important. This isn't about being a bad person.
Emotional empathy is feeling sad for your friend when they're sad. But cognitive empathy, that's the technical ability to run a simulation of their reality inside your own mind to understand why they feel that way. This requires a huge amount of abstraction and processing power, and without it, a person can become completely trapped in their own perspective.
Okay, so after hearing all of this, it's pretty easy to feel a little fatalistic. You might even recognize some of these patterns in people you know, or maybe, just maybe, even in yourself. Which brings us to the single most important question of all. Are we just stuck with the brain we have? And the answer is a resounding no. Absolutely not. The most beautiful discovery in modern neuroscience is that the brain is not a fixed piece of hardware. It is plastic. It can be rewired. It can be trained. These patterns are not a life sentence. They are just habits of thought. And habits can be changed. So how do we do it? How do we actually change them? Well, here is a really powerful, actionable technique you can use to upgrade your own mental software starting today. It's called the mirror effect. The concept is incredibly simple, but it is profoundly effective. The fastest, most direct way to enhance your own cognitive abilities is to consistently place yourself in the company of people who think on a more complex level than you currently do. Being around people who are miles ahead of you forces you to level up at an incredible rate. And here's why this works so well. When you engage with their arguments, their vocabulary, their models of thinking, their minds basically act as a mirror for your own. You're forced to see the flaws in your own logic. You're compelled to stretch your brain just to follow their reasoning. And this friction, this challenge, that is the very thing that stimulates neurogrowth. It really all comes down to this one crucial piece of advice. If you're always the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. Comfort is the enemy of growth. True intellectual development happens right at the edge of your comfort zone and not a moment before. Look, this explainer was never about judging other people. It's about self-awareness. Real intelligence isn't about having no limitations. It's about having the courage to see them clearly. So I'll leave you with this question. Looking in that mirror, what's one cognitive pattern or limitation you want to start working on today?